Good morning, Linda here from Huttons Valley Permaculture. On another beautiful morning, the 1st of June, it should be cold and wet and rainy, but we've got the sunshine. So I'm out here in the garden to make the most of it. Today we're looking at a section of my compost path. There's actually two paths in my garden that I would call my compost path. The one that I'm standing on here and the one on the other side of my garlic bed. Now this part here, I have dug out and removed the compost and put it onto the adjacent beds and have refilled it with organic material. Now I've only done a small section of the other path. I recently did a bit of a weed of this section here and refilled it with some more wood chips, so it's definitely looking like a path. With my compost paths, I do continually have to weed them because they've got lots of nutrients and lots of moisture. Plants love to grow here, including the weeds. But what I do is, when I've got a bit of time, I'll just go through, chop that down, leave it in place, and then cover it over with a bit more wood chip like I did in that other path. My plan today is not to go over paths I've already managed for the year, but to do a section that I haven't managed, not this one here. What I'm going to do is the one down next to my broad bean bed. Through this section here that's being shaded by my broad beans is a section of the compost path that definitely needs a bit of weeding. It can also be harvested for the compost that's been there for a couple of years. And what I'll be doing with that material is putting it on the weeded garden beds next to it. So you can see I've got a bit of work to do before I can get that compost onto the garden beds. The material I'll use to refill the compost path is not only the weeds from those garden beds, but also some of the materials I've been collecting over the last few days. I've got piles of material around from recent projects. This is from clearing my strawberry bed. I've got material from clearing my asparagus bed, my rock wall garden, and I've brought down some of the trees from my swales that I cut down, so I can use some of that as well. So first up, of course, we've got to clear the area so we can get into the path to get the materials out, and we've got to have clear beds to get it onto. So I'm going to start by getting these weeds out of here. And some of the old zucchini, some of which will go to the chickens. I do have one down the other end that I'm going to actually plant in my compost path, and that should grow seedlings for next year's zucchinis. Let's pull this plant out. Wow, that was a half-eaten potato that this plant's come from. I don't think we've got any, maybe a few young potatoes. But all that'll go back into the path to grow potatoes once it's all kind of settled down, I think. It doesn't take too long to clear a space with the sickle. If they're not grasses, I don't mind just chopping it off at ground level and leaving those roots in the ground, which is organic material for the soil life. And it makes it really quick to clear areas like this. In this garden bed, which is below where I usually grow my scarlet runner beans, are some really old fennel plants. Now, I rarely dig out the roots, only when they're really in the way, because what you find is all these little fennel plants grow at the base there. Now, not all of them will grow into nice bulbs. This one's looking okay for a bulb fennel, but you can see on the other side of that plant, these ones are kind of quite elongated, not really bulbing up. And often I'll just thin the plant a bit, chop out a lot of these, and kind of, perhaps throw it to the chickens or use it for compost. and I just harvest those nice bulby ones. Although, you know, using that in a soup or something will impart good fennel flavour. On the last occasion that I did dig out a fennel root, I just sort of chopped it up and threw it in the compost. And after a comment from one of my viewers suggested perhaps you could use it for food, I did a little research and found that people do use fennel root in soups and stews. Kind of, you know, thickens it up a bit like putting a potato in a soup or stew, really. I still haven't tried that, but would love to hear from anyone who has. But these roots are all staying in the ground today, but I'm just going to be clearing this back from the path a little bit so I can get this material out and onto this garden bed. Often when you cut into these plants, you come across a bulb that's sort of, you know, good enough to harvest. So I might just take that into the kitchen and see what we can do with it there. I often do grow big, thick fennel, but I don't mind using something like that just in like a stir fry. Doesn't look like I've done much on this side of the garden, but I'm preserving some nasturtium that are down there. All these fennel plants. What I love about fennel is it sends up these big flowers and the bees just adore them. And with the fennel seeds, it's really great for flavouring foods as well. On the shady side of the garden bed, there's plenty of room for the compost from the path. I haven't cleared this path for a while, and I'm expecting that most of the wood chips have actually decomposed, but I will just try and scrape off the top surface onto this bed, then empty it out before returning those wood chips back into the path again. Whoa, my fork just goes straight down. Look at that. There's quite a depth to this path. Oh, look what we've got here. You can see where I've sort of hit the soil at the bottom, but all of this is just decomposed organic material from a couple of years ago. The garden bed's going to love this stuff. Wow. It just goes right down. It just goes down and down and down. Wow. It's a bit hard on camera to show how deep this is, but it's really deep. It's going to have heaps of this organic material, and oh look, a potato. Win. Oh, you can see where the roots of the fennel come into the path to grab both moisture and nutrients. No wonder these fennel plants are so big and strong. This is all just reaching into this path area. Now, one of the things I really love about these compost paths is their ability to hold moisture, which is what really keeps these plants going through hot summers. You don't have to keep the water up to it. A couple of years ago, when I first started doing this, the garden just exploded around this path, and I never even watered it all summer. It just kind of sustained itself with both the nutrients and the moisture that this path held. And that's why I want to keep it going. Tell you what, the video is turning out to be a potato harvest video once again. I'm having a bit of a roast today for lunch, so they'll add to that nicely. With the compost and mini potato harvest done, we can now fill our path with the new material. So I've gathered my materials here. My asparagus ferns, this is just trimmings from the Tagasasti tree that I cut down. I want to try putting in more carbon into my path. I've got some sort of old grasses that are in my rock wall garden. That will be high carbon as well. And then I've got my green material that came from around the path, and this is from the old strawberry bed. Now, there are still a few grass seeds on this, but most of them have fallen off. Most of the really problematic grasses aren't in here. So you've just got to be a bit mindful of what you're adding in, because it's not a hot compost and the seeds won't be being killed off. Oh, Here's another potato. Now often I'll add old potatoes to a compost path, which is why we got a harvest of potatoes. But I also add old zucchinis. This zucchini here is on a plant that's definitely died. Oh, there's another potato. This zucchini here is on a plant that has completely died off. So I think we can add this lovely big zucchini into the compost path. And what I find when I do that is that I don't have to worry about growing zucchini seeds in my little snails at the right time of year. I'll just rely on this to produce little plants that I can transplant to other areas of the garden at the perfect time of year. Now I still have this mega zucchini here that's on a plant that's still alive. So I'll be leaving that until the plant dies off, and then I'll be drying out the seeds and saving them so I can share them with other people. I'm going to layer in the materials, starting with the branches first. And then dump everything on top of that. Now sometimes you do have to kind of stomp on it a bit to get it down where you want it, but it kind of compresses. Potato. Now most of that material is in now. It's just these few ferns that I should have put at the bottom to kind of squash them down better. But once I get the wood chips on, that should all settle down. Now normally in one of my compost paths I add in a layer of manure, but since I had plenty of materials to use, I thought I'd just use all of that plant material, and it'll kind of replicate what people in suburban gardens might be able to do without the manure on hand. Now all I've got to do, besides get the wood chips on, is get my zucchini seeds planted for next spring, and I'll kind of just bury it in underneath this layer here so it's not too far below the surface. Might take a while to settle down. Well, that is my path complete now. It is a bit springy still. What I have found is my wood chip pile has decomposed so much that I'd rather be putting that onto the garden beds rather than into the path. So I've scraped up what I can, but I think I'll need to get in a fresh pile of wood chips and just redo all my paths with a top layer of some fresh stuff to really create that path effect. But what I've gathered will do the trick for the moment. I've spread the compost from the centre of the path just along this garden bed here, and just put a bit in between these plants on this side. Now this little garden bed here, which we've built out today, is in the shade a lot. It's kind of getting onto nearly 12 midday and it hasn't seen the sun yet. So we'll have to put some plants here for winter that don't mind a bit of shade. Now, what I did learn this year was that celery is an understory type plant. So maybe if I planted out some celery here, that would go okay. So I might just trial that. Well, it's no secret that I love compost paths. I do have a number of videos on them already. Now, it does take time for the initial materials to break down and become that great material that you can put on your garden. But once you've got into the cycle, with a few paths, you can kind of just dig them out every so often, add them to the adjacent beds and really improve the soil there. And it's also a great way to get rid of just bulk material that you've dug up from your gardens. And if you don't need to do a hot compost, like I don't at the moment, the path is a great place to put it. It builds the soil around, it holds lots of moisture, and it just creates a more resilient garden. Well, that section of compost path is done, and this section is done. just leaves this middle section to do for another day. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.